Hi everybody, welcome to my latest video. I thought I would start you off with a few scenes from my land from the very beginning, just as a teaser, because this is another video similar to the one I did of my house, where I'm going to go back to the very beginning and share 1.5 years of unseen footage from before I started my YouTube channel, and showing a whole bunch of jobs that I've never shown, never discussed, things that maybe you didn't even know happened. A lot of work that I did before I started the channel that was really quite difficult, but has never been shared before. So we'll do that first, and then after that I'm going to take you on a tour of the land as it is today. We'll walk around the whole place. I'll show you what I've done. I'll show you where I'm at right now, and I'll talk a little bit about my plans for 2025 as well. But before we get into that old footage, I just want to say, if you like my video, please do give it a like. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. And if you have any questions at all throughout the course of this video, please leave me a comment below and I'll answer it there. So enough chitter chatter, let's get into this old footage, and I'll see you again at the end of that for a little tour around my land. So let's start the land adventure with possibly one of the most difficult things I've ever done, and potentially one of the dumbest as well. I decided to clear parking, and I decided to do it by hand, and I decided to do it in August, which was ridiculousness. The soil was sort of spongy, dusty stuff that I knew my car would sink into when it rained. And so I wanted to clear off this top layer, move it away, get down to something harder, so that when the rains came, my crappy car didn't get stuck in the mud. I started off with just a shovel and a bucket, and I was just pouring the buckets here and there around the top terrace, making massive piles. And then I got a wheelbarrow and I started moving the piles down to the lower terrace, where I created some garden beds and just found places around my land to get rid of all of this dirt. It was tough. I tried to hydrate as much as possible, but I didn't really have anywhere to hide except for inside the very hot barn. So I would rest when I could and just work on it as and when I felt energetic, because it was a long slog. It took me forever. Eventually I finished this mammoth task and I got my car in. It was tight and it needed a little refinement. I'm not the most amazing driver in the world, so I felt like I wanted a little more space in the parking, and I just kind of kept at it until I had enough space for my tiny car. It all took a bit more refining than expected, but eventually I got a wheelbarrow to aid in the efforts, and things moved along more quickly. But if I can give you one piece of advice regarding this type of a job, if you have the money and you have the access, a digger would have done this in about 15 minutes, where for me it took weeks and weeks and almost killed me. So, ladies and gentlemen, heavy machinery can be your friend. To define the parking area a bit more, I decided to lay down some old tiles, but in the end I drove over most of them, smashing them to smithereens. As I mentioned, I'm not the best driver, and parking was tight. So if you think digging out a massive parking space in the height of August was the stupidest thing I did in the land, you would be wrong. I think right up there along with that would have been planting 50 grapevines without actually having water set up. I dug 50 holes for grapevines all around my land on the terrace edges, and not only that, I transported mulch in from my friend's place as well. So I was just making my life difficult. I didn't have the organic matter on my site to do this, and I didn't have any water connected, so I had to water by bucket, and that was not wise, and all of the grapevines perished, and all of that work was for nothing. One of these grapevines has survived. It's right next to my house, but the rest of them are goners, and it was just a total waste of time. And the lesson there is don't take on more than you can handle. I feel like planting at the very beginning of this land journey was unwise, and doing it without even having a hose hooked up, so I had to water by bucket, was just plain foolish. But this is all a massive learning curve, and sometimes I'm just going to learn things the hard way. So with the parking and the grapevine fiascos out of the way, I was ready to do something a bit more fun, a little bit of destruction. There was this old animal lean-to pig shelter type thing off of the side of the house. It had some pretty good tiles on top, so I wanted to save them. I didn't want to just completely knock the whole thing down. And some rotten, yucky wood that was probably not worth saving. So I ended up just getting up on the ladder, taking the tiles off little by little, piece by piece, and then I pulled the whole structure down. I still have some of the tiles to this day. I've used them around the land for other things, and it was just a fun thing to do. It's nice to see progress. I knew that structure would have to come down at some point, so it was nice to just dedicate the day to pulling it down, storing the tiles, clearing up the front of the house, getting rid of everything, and making a nice little space at the side of the house to build something in the future. Another job that I thought would be fun but ended up being very frustrating was putting up gutters. The gutters you think would kind of go on pretty easily. Everyone around here has tiles. Everyone seems to use the same kind of gutters. You can choose plastic or metal. There's really only two of each kind. I went with plastic. I didn't think it would be that hard, but in the end, getting the little clips to clip onto the tiles and getting the gutters to be sloping all in one direction proved to be very finicky. But I got there in the end, and to this day, I've only put the gutters on the back of the house, and at some point in the future, once I figure out what I'll do with my pergola, I'll attempt to put gutters on the front as well. Hopefully, when I finally get around to that, it's a little less chaotic and difficult than it was the first time around. I directed rainwater into an IBC tank next to my house, and it was a total game changer to finally have some water right next to my house, accessed by a tap. One thing that I was super excited to get going on was planting trees. They say, I don't know who they are, but they say the best time to plant a tree is 25 years ago, and if not 25 years ago, the best time is today. Maybe I just made that up, I have no idea, but I was really excited to get trees in the ground, and it's one of the first things I did. However, as with the grapes, I still didn't have actual irrigation set up. I was still watering by bucket, but trees are a bit more robust than grapevines, so not as many died. There were some casualties, but overall, it was reasonably successful, even though it was a lot of work planting them and a lot of work keeping them alive with buckets of water over the summer as well. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just picked up a bunch of trees that sounded good from the local market. Almond, I got a neem tree from a friend, I got some oleanders and put them in pots, and various other fruit trees, apples, a whole bunch of stuff that I forget, but it's easy to get super excited about this kind of thing and go to the market and just get completely carried away, and I did. But lucky for me, I'd say about 75% of the trees that I planted in that first year have lived on. And then over the years, I've just added a tree here, added a tree there, killed a few trees, added some more, and the food forest is slowly evolving. With the trees in the ground, it was time to switch focus to my garden, which had absolutely no evidence of ever being a garden, even though the previous owner told me that's what it was, that's where the garden was located. When I first moved in, it was dry, dusty, barren wasteland, and by the time I was ready to plant stuff, it had completely turned into a overgrown lawn, and so I had to hack away at the grass before I could even find the soil. The first things I planted were raspberries, I also picked up some ornamental trees like madroño, lavender bushes, and a few other things that I don't remember what they are, and stuck them in the garden bed along my path just to create a little bit of privacy from anybody that might be walking by. And little by little, I created a garden bed here, another one there, and I put some things in the ground. I'd been creating plant babies over at my friend's place, and I was eager to finally get the garden going, and so I just pushed on with that, and it's been a long process. I've started with just a few beds, and I've grown into more each year, and it's been really rewarding, even if it has been a lot of work. Thing that's so amazing about growing your own food. It's absolutely wonderful to be able to walk out my front door, go down into the garden, and see what there is to eat that day. I focused mostly in the first year on tomatoes, basil, and chili plants. And I'm learning more and more each year about gardening. I'm expanding the things that I'm growing. I'm expanding the types of foods that I'm making from the stuff from the garden. I'm learning how to preserve things. I'm doing pickling. And it's all just a really wonderful learning experience. And I absolutely love having a garden, even if it is a whole bunch of work. You wouldn't know it now because my top terrace is such a disaster zone, but early on I actually put in quite a bit of effort to try to beautify it. I planted a pomegranate tree and it lives on today. I also spent some time repurposing old roof tiles to make a little garden bed around the pomegranate tree, and that's one small feature of the top terrace garden that's survived to this day. I also planted a cherry tree which died. I put in a whole bunch of strawberries and asparagus around that. They were moved, and basically my top terrace was a lesson in not powering on full steam ahead without giving things a bit more thought and consideration. I was very eager to get going on this terrace. I had grand plans, and now the whole area that I was working on, except for the pomegranate tree, has basically been buried in sand and building supplies. So all of that effort was really for nothing. Another failure is the side of the house. It doesn't look so cluttered back then, and I have absolutely improved on the clutter today. It's another disaster zone. So despite all of my best efforts, the top terrace has been kind of a failure. One positive of this was Tracy the trumpet flower. She survived a freak hailstorm in the summer. She started off really tiny in a little pot, and now she is beside my house and thriving. So I'm really happy that I got Tracy the trumpet flower started, and at least she's one success story for this top terrace. Another area that definitely could have used a lot more planning from the start was my IBC tanks. These 1,000-liter tanks, they're not heavy, but they're bulky and they're really difficult to move around for one person. But for some really weird reason, I was switching them around, moving them all over the place. I could never really decide which one was going to go where, and I ended up dragging these things around the land an ungodly amount of times. I have 3 tanks, and each one of them has been moved several times. Putting them up on the blocks to get them all level is another task that's quite difficult, and I did spend a lot of time doing that as well. I do feel like for the moment they're all in a good spot and they've been there for several years, but it did take a little while to actually get to this point, and it was a lot of effort as well. One thing that I didn't do a lot of filming of, but it has taken a lot of work, is laying out the pipes. So each of these tanks has a whole bunch of pipes and taps and all kinds of connections and all sorts of things buried in the ground, above the ground, all over the place. And connecting those was a lot of work. Even deciding on where things were going to go and how the pipes would run took a lot of thought as well. And then actually getting all of the pieces together, fastening them together, figuring it all out on the fly as I went, because this whole thing was new to me, took a lot of time. And then with plumbing stuff, it doesn't matter how much planning you put in, no matter what, you always are missing some key piece. So with all the plumbing stuff, I'm sure it always involved several trips back to the plumbing store to get that one thing that I was missing. So despite how this might sound, I actually do love outdoor plumbing. I find it so interesting to see it all fit together, and when you turn that tap on and the thing works, it really is the most satisfying thing, and I absolutely love it. And all the work that I've put into the water systems has been worthwhile. Another early water-related task that was a little less enjoyable and a lot more slimy and messy was cleaning out the concrete water tank on my second terrace. This water tank is fed from a spring at the bottom of the terrace wall that I call the Hole of Mystery, and it's ever flowing, a little bit more in the winter, a little bit less in the summer, but the water is always going through there, and it's my main water source. But when I moved in, this area was totally overgrown with weeds, and the tank was completely filled with muck and debris and all kinds of stuff. So I had to hop in there, tear all the weeds out, rip out the plants from the side of the tank, and just get to work mucking it out. While the job was super messy, it was also very rewarding, and it was nice to finally have a clean water tank. Unfortunately, it also uncovered a whole bunch of cracks and holes and showed me that the tank needed a lot of repairs. But that's something I fixed slowly over time as I gained the skills, and now I have a really wonderful water tank that holds the water with a fabulous deck on it that I'll show you later in the video. Though the early work on my top terrace was mostly a waste of time and a lesson in not rushing ahead without planning, I did do some things directly in front of the house that actually paid off. I spent some time making a little side garden, stacking some stones. It was actually quite difficult because I was doing dry stacking instead of using mortar, and that was one of the first times I'd ever done that. So it was a real challenge, but it was just a small wall, and I was incredibly happy with how it turned out. That also gave me a little space to make a garden with future plans of planting something that would give me privacy. My dad ended up making me a wonderful trellis, and I planted jasmine. And so now at that side, I have a nice plant growing in the garden, which gives me some extra privacy as well. And then in the front of the house, I also decided to make a little garden, although this one is a little bit less finished and it's going to be changed once I start working on my pergola very soon. But it was really fun to move the rocks around, put in some soil, and I actually planted the one grapevine there that remains to this day, and it's doing well, and I'm hoping that once I get the pergola in place, that grapevine, along with a few other plants, will climb up and offer me some shade in the summer. Another job I had to do that was way less fun but had to be done was moving soil. With the garden beds in place, I wanted to put some gravel down to create a patio, and that meant digging out some soil, which wasn't a super sexy job, it wasn't that interesting, but it did take me quite a bit of time. I also ended up running a drainage pipe from my kitchen through the wall, and I had to bury that and steer that away from the front of the house as well. So that involved digging a long trench and sticking in a pipe. And again, not the most interesting of jobs. Everything is now buried underground. Nobody will really ever see my hard work, but it's something that I had to do. And I'm pretty sure, if I think back on all the projects I've done so far, there's probably lots of jobs like that that are things that I forget, little things that maybe took me a long time, but the work is now hidden or literally buried under the ground, and I'll never see it again, and I've just completely forgotten it. Because it has been 4 years, and I definitely feel like I've done a lot more work than just what I'm showing here, but it's easy to forget these jobs as you move on to something else. And let's finish on a job that involved loads of physical work and was kind of a waste of time, but kind of not. I want to do a perimeter wall around the back part of my land, right beside the house. I want to build a stem wall out of stone and then eventually build a wall out of cob on top of that, with some tiles on top as a little roof over the wall. So in order to prepare for this, I dug a huge trench and I filled it up with gravel and I tamped it down, and then I moved a whole bunch of stones and created this long stem wall that would have been really nice for this future wall to be built upon. However, I completely changed my plans and I decided to put a tool shed there as part of the wall. So I ended up stealing all those stones away and using them for my tool shed foundation. So I put the stones in place and then I moved them, but at least I was able to take all the stones out of the unruly pile. I created the footing, the rubble trench for the stones to go on, and that's going to be used in the future anyway. So even though I didn't use this stem wall for the purpose I had at the time, it's all okay. All the work that I did will be used in a different way. But sometimes that happens, and I think that's a really good lesson for me to take away from this. Looking back on all this footage has been interesting because I've seen a lot of things that maybe I should have given more thought to. I've seen a lot of wasted efforts, but at the same time, I've learned a lot in the process from each thing I've done, and I don't really think that any of it has actually been a waste of time. Okay folks, that's a wrap on the old-timey footage. I hope you enjoyed that. I really loved going back and looking at all that old stuff because it's easy to forget how far I've come, how far the land has come, and how much work's gone into this place over the past 4 years. So it's a nice reminder of just sticking with it, keeping at it, pushing on, and little by little I'm making progress, and it's really nice to see. So the plan is to just take a little stroll around, talk about the jobs that I've done, talk about my plans for the future, and I'm gonna end the tour in a spot on my land that, believe it or not, I've never actually been to yet. I've looked into it, but I haven't actually explored fully, which is pretty crazy since I've been here for 4 years and my place is only a half an acre large/small. So you think I would have explored every little corner, but I haven't. And that's because this place is a little bit overgrown, a little bit swampy, and I just haven't really got in there. So that's where we're gonna end. See if you can guess where in the land it is. And at the end, we're gonna explore it and see what's up. So enough chatter, let's go for a walk. Before we get going on the specific jobs around the place, it's just a lovely day. I just wanted to take note. But also, I just wanted to explain that the house is 20 square meters inside. This place comes with a well. It's got a water cistern. It has 30 olive trees, a couple of orange trees, a nice lemon tree, and it cost me 14,000 euros back in August 2020. So that's a bit of background. This here is Tracy the trumpet flower. She's only got one trumpet going at the moment, but usually she's full. You saw her earlier as a little baby in the hailstorm, and so she's come a long way. Okay, let's start with what will probably be my next job, which will be the pergola. So this, as you saw before, was just all dirt. There was nothing here. There was no side garden. Didn't have a lot going on. And what I'd love to do now is build a pergola, probably just taking in about 2/3 of the house so that I can have plants grow, offering shade in the summer. And yeah, the leaves will fall in the winter to allow the sun in. I'm gonna use these long stones that I have over here to make stairs, to make a sort of little wall, and then it's going to be made of wood. So that's a project that's imminent, because these stairs as they are right now are still are quite treacherous, and yeah, it's time to finally sort out the rest of the front of the house. Now that I've finally done this window hole, the window is still missing in action, but the hole is there and yeah, ready to go. So the land as it is now isn't looking so good up here. I've got the pomegranate tree that I planted ages ago. You can see the little tiles there from where I made the bed, but it's all obviously overgrown. This has just become my sort of staging area, my dumping ground, and that's because I don't really have a lot of space on the land, and most of my building projects are up here, so that's just sort of how it's turned out, unfortunately. And up here we've got another dumping ground. The side of the house, it's kind of a disaster. No, it's not kind of a disaster. It's most definitely a disaster. I'm going to be using these granite stones here for my tool shed foundation, and these ones for the pergola and the front of the house. So until I get those projects on the go again, there's just going to be stones everywhere. I have loads of them all around, and I'm excited because the more stones I have, the more freedom it gives me for creativity with the pergola, but it's also really messy. And then over here, I've got the beginnings of my tool shed foundation, which is a project that I've started and abandoned, but it'll get done in the end. And that exterior wall that I made, it's actually been completely eliminated, and I've repurposed those stones in the tool shed. So that was kind of a waste of time, I suppose, but eventually there'll be a wall there. I've stacked the firewood. No, I have not stacked the firewood. I've got the firewood off the ground onto the pallets, but it's too short to stack. I asked him to do me short pieces, and so this is what he gave me. Totally unstackable. A lot of people ask me about the building behind my house. It's owned by two families. One family owns the land over on this side, going down there, and the other side is land somewhere over there that I'm not actually sure what the borders are. So that's not mine. I would love to one day eventually own that, or at least the side that goes down this way. But that's a purchase for another time. When I did my house tour, plenty of you asked me, where's my toilet? The answer is here. It's a compost toilet. There's a bucket in there. It suits me fine. What doesn't suit me fine is the shredded door. So I don't usually have people around here, but sometimes they come to prune the olives, and obviously this is not a very good pooping situation. So I've got another tarp here, and I'm going to repair that door very soon. And then this is wood for the tool shed, which I might actually repurpose for the pergola. Yeah, up here is just kind of a disaster zone. Eventually, this is going to be my entertaining area beside the house. So I'll have a tool shed there. I'll have possibly some kind of an outdoor kitchen, just sort of a sitting area with a nice view there. I might actually extend it out further and get rid of this polytunnel once I actually have the tool shed to put this stuff inside, and then the wood will be used as well. So right now, this is the polytunnel where I have most of my tools and things. It's a lot less disastrous than it was before, but it still could use a little work tidying, and also just using the materials on the tool shed would be good as well. And so over here, I have the IBC tank that one of the many IBC tanks that I've moved around the place. It's been here since the start. And then down here, this is a definite improvement. I've got the stairs that my dad made a long time ago when he was here with my mom. They've visited many times. My parents have been super helpful over the years. My mom in the garden, my dad doing lots of different building projects. So I've been really lucky to have their support and encouragement. It's been wonderful. And here's just a closer look at the water source. So down there, it's difficult to see, is the hole of mystery where water just kind of comes out of the terrace wall into the cistern. And I've built, my dad's built this deck over top, and I've done a whole bunch of repairs underneath here as well. And the panels lift off from this deck so that you can actually give it a clean. Let's see if I can get it up and see what it looks like right now. Yeah, so it's all looking pretty clean under there. Usually it gets very algae infested, but since it's covered from the sun, it's definitely a lot better than it was. So I've got my lemon tree, it's looking amazing. I've got my lime tree. I've got 3 of these little guys. Limes are quite difficult to grow in this area just because of frost, but I don't think I really get too much frost over here, so that's pretty lucky. I've got 3 lime trees that are doing really well. And this lemon tree is just insanity once again. I definitely need to start taking some lemons off so these branches don't break. And this terrace here with the splash pool, which is under this gray cover. Let me just show you. So that's my splash pool. This terrace will maybe be like a barbecue area. I might have some sort of lounge chairs by the pool, just a place to sort of chill out. And eventually I might also put a long drop compost toilet going off the edge behind that IBC tank there. This tank here feeds my greenhouse, and it also goes down to the bottom terrace for the trees. But before we head that way, let's take a look at the garden. And this has definitely come a long way from the dust pile that it was at the very beginning. I've tidied it up recently. There's still a lot of work to do. I have this geotextile fabric down. I was anticipating getting some wood chips, but they never came. So it's just kind of been blowing around, getting a little crazy, but I've got some garden beds here, some parsley, and it's just looking much better than it was. And I've covered it up with olive branch chippings, just to sort of cover the beds over until spring so that I don't have to do too much weeding. And as with any little quinta, there's always some sort of dumping ground for weird things. So I have a few tires there that I need to get rid of, and some other things as well. I might need a trip to the dump, or I might see if anyone wants to take those off my hands. These are buckets of poo. It's compost stuff, so basically after a couple of years it's going to decompose down, and you can put it around the base of trees and things like that. I've got my chili plants overwintering. The weather's been actually uncharacteristically warm and dry, so I haven't really felt like they've needed to be stored away, but I'm slowly going to move them into this greenhouse here. Once I get some more paving stones, I'll start to bring them inside. This needs to be tidied. I'm waiting to get those paving stones down before I sort everything out. And then this terrace here is, I guess, I don't know what this one is. It's kind of, I did want it to be a food forest, but there's a huge stone that goes across this whole terrace, and so it makes it pretty impossible to plant trees. But I have had some success. This apple tree has been here for about 3 years. It's looking a lot better now than it did last year. There's an almond tree here. I've had some success with that. I did plant first a walnut tree in this area that died, and then an avocado tree that died as well. This guy here is a neem tree, and this started like a little tiny stick, and it's only about 3.5 years old, and it's looking pretty amazing. And I think I mentioned I have 30 olive trees. They've produced really well for me every year except for 1 year, and that was a year where nobody really had a good harvest. So, and I had plenty of olive oil from the previous year, so that was fine. I've got sort of my last year's wood store, so maybe I should go through this and see what's up in there, and then my compost bins with some collapsing walls happening. So yeah, it's been a big change, especially up in the garden. I've put a huge amount of work into the garden over the years, as has my mum. She's done loads of planting, loads of weeding for me. And yeah, it's come a long way, and little by little, things just keep improving. And that's what I like about living this sort of lifestyle, sort of permaculture, and just kind of plodding along. With each year, you make little improvements with everything. So I have some weed covers on the garden path up there. I've got some mulch, and that's going to save me a lot of time next year when it comes time to weed. So things like that, hooking up water systems. Yeah, with each step, you just make your life easier the next year. So this is Peter Pecan tree, and he looked like this last year, and I was afraid he was dead, but he survived. He sprung back to life, so I think he'll be fine. I think just they lose their leaves in the winter. And I've got a whole bunch of other fruit trees down here that I planted myself. I think this is a Japanese pear. And then I've got a plum tree. The clementine tree was already here. Got a lime tree over there, pear tree, another peach tree, and an apple tree. That one's not looking so good though. And then in some amazing news, if you're somebody that hasn't been following my channel for the past year or so, one of my best friends, Sinead, has moved next door, and I've been following her journey as well. She's been here for about, I want to say 6 to 8 months, and she's already set up a yurt. She's got her water system set up. She's got a lot of stuff going on, and I'll be sharing her progress on my channel as well. These orange trees, they were already here when I got here, and they're really delicious. And yeah, some fennel. There's all kinds of edible plants here. I wish I knew more about foraging. One day I'll learn about all that stuff. And the part of the land that I've never been to is beyond this bushy stuff. Beyond the mint, beyond all these unidentified things. You can see I've got a hose here. So I've been here, and this is about the farthest I've been. The place that I've never been is into this thing. It's a cistern, it's got a concrete wall, and that tells me that somewhere in that bushy mess, there's another water mine. So we're gonna go in there, I'm gonna get the strimmer, we're gonna go in and take a look. Okay, I'm back on the top terrace. I've been getting ready. The boots are on, the strimmer's on. But before we go back down there, I thought I would also mention that my plan for the top terrace is for a medicinal garden and a herb garden, succulents, maybe a little pond, something ornamental, really beautiful. And that means the parking is going to go down on my third terrace where I had the avocado and the walnut tree die. There's a big stone there. I can't really plant trees anyway, and I figured I can make the road just about wide enough to be able to sneak my car in there. And I'd rather have it down here than right in front of the house anyways. So that's fine with me. But right now, it's time to crawl in there and see what's up. I've got the strimmer, I've got the big guns out, and I'm ready to see what's lurking in this corner. So as suspected, I think this is another water source. And the reason I think that is because that looks like it goes back. Yeah, there's a big hole there. And it's got one of these stones over top, which is what you often see when there's a sort of water mine or a spring going back into a hill. And somebody back in the day decided to build a wall to catch the water. So it's very similar to the one that's on top of my land. And why would they build this if there was no water coming in? So I think that's so cool that even on a relatively small piece of land like this, I'm still making discoveries. You can feel it's spongy, you can feel it's a lot of dirt sitting kind of in swampy sticks and stuff. So I think the water is flowing, and it's really very exciting when you find another water source on your land. I'm not going to do anything with this anytime soon. However, Sinead and I would love to have a sauna somewhere in the valley, and it might be really cool to make a little splash pool down here with a sauna tucked away somewhere over in this corner. So who knows? Who knows what the plans are, but it's always nice to dream big and just work slowly towards the vision, which is what I've been doing for 4 years, and I'm getting there. Slowly is the key word, but I'm enjoying the process. And for me, that's the whole point of this whole thing, to learn along the way, to build beautiful things, to be in nature, and yeah, just to dream big and see what I can come up with. So I feel like down here in this new undiscovered part of my land is a nice place to end the tour and to end this video. I really enjoyed going back and looking at all the footage. I really hope you liked it as well. And if you're new to my channel and haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. If you like the video, give it a like. And I've probably missed a whole bunch of stuff on this tour. I kind of just zipped through it. So if you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments, and I always reply to every comment, so I'll get to it eventually. So that's all from me. Thanks for watching, as always. Happy New Year, everybody out there, and I'll see you sometime in the first days of January for my December recap. And I'm looking forward to a very productive 2025. So I'll see you then.